After winning the Mahabharata, the Pandavas had gained everything: kingdom, honor, victory. But just a few years later, they abandoned their kingdoms, gave up their crowns, and marched toward death. Question is, what happened? What event compelled the victors of the Mahabharata to abandon everything? The answer to that question lies not in Hastinapur, but in a divine city situated far away on the seashore. That city was called Dwarka. It was founded by Lord Krishna himself. Golden palaces, countless warriors, rich splendor, and celebrations all around. It seemed as if the city's splendor would never end. But destiny had other plans, for the Dwapara Yuga had reached its final stages, and time itself was about to end the divine play. One day, some Yadava princes decided to play a prank on the sages.
They dressed a snake as a woman and, laughing, asked the sages, "So,
Tell me, well, this snake bear a son or a daughter?"
The sages, through their divine vision, knew everything. His face hardened with anger.
Neither a son nor a daughter would be born. From her womb would spring an iron pestle, and that would be those of the destruction of the Yadava dynasty.
At the time, no one took the curse seriously. But the greatest destructions in history often begin with a small mistake. Sometime later, the sage's curse came true. An iron pestle did indeed emerge from the snake's belly. All of Dwarka was terrified. King Ugrasena ordered the pestle to be crushed and thrown into the sea. People thought the crisis was over, but it hadn't. It had simply transformed. The pestle's powder mingled with the sand on the beach. And in that very spot, a strange grass began to grow. An ordinary-looking grass that would, in the future, be the death of the entire Yadava dynasty. Time passed, but Shri Krishna knew everything. He knew that the Dwapara Yuga was ending. He knew that even his earthly incarnation was nearing its end. Sometimes he would sit alone on the beach, gaze at the distant horizon, and fall silent. Because only they knew that the final chapter of Neva had begun. One day, all the Yadavas gathered in the Prabhas region. Celebrations were underway. There was music, laughter, and wine. But amidst the celebrations, a dispute erupted. First there was a war of words, then insults, then anger, and then thousands of Yadav warriors, once united, turned on each other. Now they were shedding each other's blood. Those who had once been the pride of Shri Krishna's army had now become enemies. Swords were drawn, maces were raised, screams echoed, blood flowed. And then someone plucked up the same grass from the seashore. It was no ordinary grass. The power of the cursed iron pestle had been imbued into it. As soon as it was used as a weapon, it transformed into an iron rod. And then the massacre began. Yadavas killed each other. Brother killed brother. Friend killed friend. Son killed father. And in no time, Shri Krishna's great Yadava dynasty began to end with its own hands. Shri Krishna watched all this. There was neither anger nor surprise in his eyes, because all this was predestined. This was the plan of time. This was the change of era. In a few hours, the Yadava dynasty was almost wiped out. Bodies were strewn across the earth. The seashore was red with blood, and the air was filled with the smell of death. Shri Krishna slowly closed his eyes, knowing that his play was coming to an end. A deathly silence fell upon the land of Kurukshetra. Where the Yadava festival had been going on just a short while ago, bodies were now strewn everywhere. The waves of the sea were carrying away blood, and amidst that destruction, Shri Krishna stood silent. His own Yadava dynasty had been wiped out before his eyes. But there was no sorrow on his face, for this was not the end, but the beginning of the next chapter of time. At that very moment, Balarama sat under a huge tree on the seashore. He understood that his task was complete. The Mahabharata was over. Dharma had been established, and the Dwapara Yuga was in its final moments. Slowly, Balarama closed his eyes. A wonderful peace descended upon the surroundings. Then a divine light emanated from his body, and instantly a huge white serpent appeared. It was Ananta Shesha himself, the very serpent on whom Lord Vishnu rests. The divine serpent moved towards the ocean and dissolved into the waters. Balarama's earthly incarnation had ended. Shri Krishna stood at a distance watching the scene. A faint smile graced his face. Knowing it was his turn, he gazed at the sky, the sea, and the earth for the last time. The same earth for which he had killed Kansa, lifted Govardhan, and guided the path of Dharma in the Mahabharata. Then he set off alone into the forest. Sitting under a huge peepal tree deep within the forest, he stretched out his right foot, closed his eyes, and fell into deep meditation. At that very moment, a hunter named Jara was searching for prey in the forest. Suddenly, he saw something shining among the bushes. He thought it was a deer. He raised his bow and shot, and the arrow struck Shri Krishna's leg. Jara arrived in a moment, but as he saw whom he had wounded, he was horrified. Trembling, he fell at Shri Krishna's feet.
Lord, I have committed a terrible crime. Please forgive me. Do
not be afraid. What has happened was inevitable. You are only an instrument. In your previous life, you were the Monkey King Bali, and I, in the form of Rama, killed you. Today, that deed has been accomplished.
Hearing this, he wept. But there was a wonderful peace on Krishna's face, for this was not death. It was the end of his incarnation. Gradually, divine light began to spread around him. The sky turned golden. Gods, sages, Gandharvas, and Apsaras appeared in the sky. It was as if the entire universe had gathered to welcome their Lord. Shri Krishna looked at the earth for the last time. The same earth where he spent his childhood, where he established Dharma and showed humanity the path. In the next moment, his divine form began to dissolve into light. That light rose skyward, and Shri Krishna departed from the earth. At that very moment, the Dwapara Yuga ended and the Kali Yuga began. Whoa. But the greatest impact of this event was yet to come. For the Pandavas seated in Hastinapur had not yet received the news that their dearest friend, their guide, and God himself was no longer on earth. The great empire of Hastinapur, the king of Dharma, Yudhishthira, had become history. But one day a messenger arrived in the royal court from Dwarka. His face was filled with fear. In a trembling voice he said,
Your Majesty, the Yadava dynasty has been destroyed. And Lord Shri Krishna has also left this earth.
Time seemed to stand still for a moment. Bhima, Nakula, and Sahadeva remained silent. But Arjuna was the most deeply hurt. Krishna was not just his friend. He was his charioteer, guide, and support of life in you. Upon receiving the news, Arjuna set out for Dwarka. He still held on to hope that perhaps this was all false. But when he arrived in Dwarka several days later, his heart was broken. The magnificent city lay deserted. The palaces were empty. The streets were silent, and every corner reminded him of Krishna. There he found Krishna's wives and the remaining survivors. But a new crisis loomed ahead. The sea was slowly swallowing Dwarka. Arjuna decided to take off the women, children, and survivors to Hastinapur. During the journey, some bandits attacked the convoy. Under normal circumstances, this battle wouldn't have lasted even a moment, as Arjuna, the one who had defeated Bhishma and Karna, was facing them. But today, something had changed. He picked up Gandhari and recalled the divine weapons, Agni Astra, Varuna Astra, Vayu Astra, and Brahmastra. But there was no response. It was as if he had forgotten the mantra. The divine powers had fallen silent. Arjuna tried again and again, but nothing happened. Then, for the first time, he realized that Krishna had truly gone. His strength was not only due to his valor, but also to Krishna's grace, and now that grace had departed from the earth. The bandits continued to attack. Arjuna fought on, but they were no longer the same. The speed of his arrows had slowed. His divine powers had been exhausted. Many women were abducted, much wealth was looted, and Arjuna could not stop them. After the battle ended, Arjuna fell to his knees. Tears welled in his eyes. This defeat was not due to any enemy, but to time. Time had revealed that the era of heroes had ended. When Arjuna returned to Hastinapur, his confidence had also been shattered. He told Yudhishthira everything: Krishna's departure, the destruction of the Yadavas, the end of Dwaraka, and his own helplessness. A deep silence fell over the assembly. Then Yudhishthira said, "The
Purpose for which we came to Earth has been accomplished. Now we too must depart."
That very moment, the Pandavas decided to renounce their kingdoms and embark on their final journey. That night in Hastinapur, the greatest decision in history was being made within the palace. Yudhishthira sat alone, reflecting on his life's journey. This was the city where he was born, where he endured humiliation, exile, and finally became king. But now his mind was free from the throne. The next morning, the royal court convened. Ministers, generals, scholars of Arshi, and thousands of citizens were present. Just then, the 5 Pandavas and Draupadi entered the assembly. Today, their faces displayed no royal pride, but only serenity. Yudhishthira paused before the throne. The very throne for which the Mahabharata had been fought, for which millions of warriors had sacrificed their lives. He slowly removed his crown and placed it on the head of his grandson, Parikshit. The assembly was stunned.
From today, Parikshit would be the new emperor of Hastinapur.
People's eyes moistened as they understood that today, not just a king but an era was passing away.
Their task was complete. Dharma had been established. Now they must free themselves from worldly attachments.
Hastinapur wept that day because the heroes themselves were leaving the city. That night, the Pandavas abandoned their crowns, jewels, and royal robes, and donned ordinary clothes. They were no longer kings. They were pilgrims seeking liberation. Draupadi, too, was lost in the memories of her life. The humiliation of those Sulfamvra, the exile, Kurukshetra, the deaths of her sons, and finally victory. But that victory could never become true happiness. They wiped their tears and decided to move on. The next morning, the entire city of Hastinapur was gathered. Every eye was moist, every face sad. Slowly, the palace gates opened. Yudhishthira was in the forefront, then Bhima, Arjuna, Sahadeva, and finally, Draupadi. People wept and prostrated themselves at their feet. Many citizens insisted on accompanying them. But Yudhishthira stopped them, saying, "We must make this journey alone." Slowly, the Pandavas left the borders of Hastinapur. They took one last look back. The palace, the kingdom, and the people were all left behind. Then a simple dog began to follow them. No one chased it away. It quietly accompanied them. But no one knew that this dog would later become Yudhishthira's greatest test. The Pandavas pressed on. Plains, rivers, and forests were left behind, and the white peaks of the Himalayas became visible in the distance. The very Himalayas, where their final test awaited them, where history's greatest heroes would fall one by one, and where only one Pandava would reach the end. Days passed. The Pandavas continued to press on. Now they had no kingdom, no army, no glory behind them. Now they had only each other and the endless Himalayas in front of them. As they advanced, the land changed. The lush forests had vanished. The rivers were left behind. The air grew thinner and colder. Each step was more difficult than the previous, but no one stopped, for they knew there was no point in turning back. This journey was all about moving forward. After several days, they reached the heights of the Himalayas. There was only white snow all around. It was as if the entire world had fallen silent. Strong winds blew snowflakes against their faces as Yudhishthira walked in the lead, followed by Bhima, Arjuna, Nakula, Sahadeva, and Draupadi at the back. Years of hardship had now exhausted their bodies. This journey across the Himalayas was robbing them of their last strength. One day, as they were walking along a steep, snowy path, Draupadi's steps suddenly faltered. She tried to steady herself, but her body gave out. And the next moment, she collapsed onto the snow. Everyone stopped. Bhima immediately turned back. Arjuna knelt beside her. Nakula and Sahadeva stood stunned. But Draupadi couldn't get up. Her breathing slowed. She slowly looked up. The white sky, the blowing snow, and the faces of her loved ones. It felt as if her entire life was flashing before her eyes. The Swayamvara of Indraprastha, the destruction of her 5 sons, Kurukshetra, and finally, Krishna, the same Krishna who had supported her through every difficult time. Tears welled up in her eyes, but this time there was no pain, only peace. Slowly, her breathing stopped. Queen Draupadi's journey ended on that snowy Himalayan land. For a few moments, no one spoke. Only the sound of the wind echoed.
Brother, Draupadi had suffered all her life. She never abandoned Dharma. Then why did she fall?
Yudhishthira remained silent for a few moments. There was pain in his eyes, but his mind could not deviate from the truth. He said softly,
Draupadi was great. She was virtuous. She was courageous. But there was a bias in her heart. She married 5 husbands. But she had a special love for Arjuna. She could not see everyone equally. And because of this subtle flaw, she fell here.
Bhima fell silent. It was difficult to hear, but on this journey, there could be no lies, no attachments, no excuses. This was the soul's final journey, where each person had to bear the burden of their own actions. After a while, Yudhishthira started moving forward again. Bhima was stunned.
Mother? We leave Draupadi here?
Yudhishthira did not look back. He simply said,
Body will remain here, but the soul will continue its journey.
And then he moved forward. One by one, everyone followed him. Draupadi was left behind forever in the white snow of the Himalayas. The journey had become even more difficult, as for the first time, the Pandavas had lost a member of their group. But they did not know that this was only the beginning. Soon another Pandava would also fall. After Draupadi, the Pandavas' journey became even more arduous. The icy winds of the Himalayas were constantly testing them. Now even the light conversation between them had ceased. Everyone was silent. Only the sound of footsteps and the whisper of the wind could be heard. Yudhishthira walked in the front, followed by Bhima and Arjuna, and Nakula and Sahadeva at the back. The group had become smaller, and each step became heavier. Days passed. The snow grew deeper, the wind grew sharper, breathing became difficult. But they continued walking, as stopping was no longer possible. One day, Sahadeva's steps suddenly faltered. He tried to steady himself, but his body gave out and he fell to his knees on the snow. Bhima immediately ran towards him. Arjuna also came closer. But Sahadeva understood that his journey was coming to an end. There was a strange peace in his eyes. He began to remember his childhood. The boy who was called the wisest, who could foresee future events, but still could not change destiny. Everything began to calm before his eyes, and slowly his breath stopped. Sahadeva's journey on the Himalayan snow had ended. Bhima asked in a heavy voice,
Mother, why did Sahadev fall? Sahadev was great and wise, but deep in his heart there was a subtle pride in his intelligence. He considered himself wiser than others, and that was his fault.
Bhima said nothing, because on this journey every truth was harsh and every truth was final. The Pandavas moved on. Now only 4 remained: Yudhishthira, Bhima, Arjuna, and Nakula. But the Himalayas had not yet calmed down. After a few days, Nakula's pace began to slow. His body was tired. His steps no longer supported him. On a steep climb, he suddenly lost his balance and fell on the snow. Bhima immediately ran towards them, but Nakula understood. There was peace in his eyes. He began to remember his life. The prince whose beauty was talked about throughout Aryavarta, whose charm were admired by everyone. But today, that same Nakula lay calm before death. He looked at his brothers for the last time, and slowly his eyes closed. Nakula's journey was over. Bhima's eyes filled with tears. He out!
Why did Nakula fall?
Nakula was a virtuous man, but he had a subtle pride in his beauty. He considered himself the most handsome, and that was his fault.
Bhima fell silent. His heart began to feel heavy as, one by one, they were leaving. Only 3 Pandavas remained: Yudhishthira, Bhima, and Arjuna. And behind them was the mysterious dog. The Himalayas had become harsher. Snowstorms began to rage, and every step became a new test. But the greatest test was yet to come. For now, Arjuna was about to fall. The same Arjuna who had once defeated the world's greatest warriors. Now the Himalayas had become harsher than ever. There was only snow all around, white, calm, and ruthless. Only 3 Pandavas remained: Yudhishthira, Bhima, and Arjuna. And behind them was that mysterious dog. There was no conversation anymore. Only footsteps, each step growing heavier. Draupadi had left. Sahadeva and Nakula had also been left behind. Now there were only 3 brothers, but now the silence within him was growing. As he walked, memories flooded Arjuna's mind. Kurukshetra, the roaring conch, the twanging of Gandhari, Bhishma, Drona, Karna, and the moment when he had single-handedly turned the tide of the battle. He remembered Krishna, the same Krishna who had been his charioteer guide and support of life. A faint pain appeared on Arjuna's face, as if some invisible weight was tearing him apart from within. And then his steps faltered. He tried to hold on, but his body gave way, and the next moment, he fell to his knees on the snow. Bhima immediately ran towards him. Yudhishthira also came near, but Arjuna had already understood. His journey was coming to an end. There was no fear in his eyes now, only memories. Krishna's smiling face, the dust of Kurukshetra, and the glory he once had. Arjuna slowly looked up at the sky, as if he saw Krishna somewhere far away. The same compassion, the same peace, the same love.
Madhava, I am coming.
And the next moment, his breath stopped. Arjuna's journey on the Himalayan snow was over. For a few moments, no one spoke. Only the sound of the wind echoed. Bhima's eyes turned red. He looked at Yudhishthira. His voice trembled.
Brother, why did Arjuna? Arjuna was great, but he had a subtle pride in his prowess. He believed that no warrior could stand before him. And that was his fault.
Bhima said nothing, because he was at a loss for words. Only the truth remained, and the truth was harsh. Now only two brothers remained, Yudhishthira and Bhima, and behind them walked the same dog. The Himalayas had become even more terrifying. The blizzards had intensified, and the wind seemed to tear at the very soul. But the final test was yet to come. For now, Bhima was about to fall. The same Bhima who had once broken Duryodhana's thigh, whose roar had made the army tremble, and when Bhima fell, Yudhishthira would be truly alone. Now the Himalayas were at their harshest. There was only snow and a silent, sad, and stilled fear. Now only the two Pandavas remained, Yudhishthira and Bhima, and behind them walked the same dog. There was almost no conversation between the two brothers. There was only silence and the sound of footsteps. Each step grew heavier. Each breath labored. Bhima's massive frame was still strong, but the harshness of the Himalayas was wearing him down. His gait slowed, and for the first time, fatigue was visible on his face. As he walked, Bhima began to remember his life. He remembered Hastinapur, his mother Kunti, his feud with Duryodhana, the Lakshagriha, his exile on the Mahabharata war. He remembered his own strength. When he had broken Duryodhana's thigh, when he had killed Kichaka, when his roar had made enemies tremble. Bhima smiled slightly, but it didn't last long for the next moment. His Togar faltered. He tried to steady himself, but his body had given up. Then he collapsed onto the snow. The Himalayan stillness was shattered. Yudhishthira immediately stopped. He gazed at Bhima and slowly approached. There was no surprise in Bhima's eyes, but acceptance.
Brother, has my time come?
Yudhishthira remained silent for a moment. His eyes were moist, but his face was calm. Then he said softly,
Bhima, you were a great warrior, 1-to-1. Your strength was extraordinary. But you never completely let go of the pride of your power. You often boasted of your prowess.
Young man.
This was your last bond.
Bhima slowly nodded, as if accepting the truth. Tears welled in his eyes, but there was no fear. He looked at Yudhishthira one last time and said with a slight smile,
Mother, you have always been superior to us because you conquered yourself.
Yudhishthira's eyes welled up, but he said nothing. Bhima's breathing slowed. His massive body began to calm. One moment, then another, and then everything was still. The mighty Bhima had completed his final journey across the Himalayan snows. Now only one Pandava, Dharmaraja Yudhishthira. Yudhishthira gazed at Bhima for a moment. Then he shifted his gaze. Now only the dog that had been walking with him, without stopping until now, was with him. The Himalayas seemed even more vast and terrifying. But Yudhishthira's steps remained unstopped. He continued on, alone, absolutely alone. And then, in the distance, a divine light appeared among the clouds. A golden aura rose, piercing the sky. Yudhishthira stopped. Their final test was now upon them. The gates of heaven were near. But the greatest question before them, would they reach the end of this journey? And the dog accompanying them was about to be part of this final decision. Now only one traveler remained, Dharmaraja Yudhishthira and the dog with him. No brother, no friend, no kingdom. Everything they had in their entire life had been left behind. Now there was only the Himalayas, and beyond them, heaven. Yudhishthira continued slowly onward. He had no attachment left within him. And then, suddenly the sky began to change. The dark clouds parted. Golden light spread all around. Flowers began to rain from the sky, and a divine chariot appeared among the clouds, made of gold, glittering with gems. Seated on that chariot was Dhritarashtra, Indra.
Dharmaraja Yudhishthira, you have completed your task on Earth.
Now heaven awaits you. Get into the chariot.
Yudhishthira looked toward heaven, then at the dog standing beside him. It was with him until the very end. Yudhishthira said calmly,
This one will also come with me. Dogs are not allowed in heaven. Leave him here.
Silence fell for a few moments. Then Yudhishthira spoke.
How can I abandon the one who stood me to the end?
He is only an animal. Don't give up heaven for him.
But Yudhishthira remained unmoved. His eyes grew firm.
If I have to abandon my companion to attain heaven, that is not a heaven I will accept.
I will not go to a place where I have to abandon Dharma to reach it. The
Entire sky fell silent, and then the dog began to glow. His body transformed into light, and the next moment, Dharmadev himself was standing there. Yudhishthira was stunned. Dharmadev smiled.
Son, this was your final